My name is Clarice Whitmore. I am 76 years old. And the day my husband smiled while I cried on the kitchen floor was the day I finally understood something that changed my life forever. Before I tell you what happened next, please subscribe to this channel, like this video, and turn on your notifications so you don't miss stories like this. And tell me in the comments which country you're watching from so I know who is sitting with me right now. Because what my husband did after years of marriage, and how I watched everything he built slowly fall apart, is something I never thought I would live to see. I was on my knees when it happened. Not praying. Crying. The tile was cold against my skin, and my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't stand. I had just come back from the doctor. My legs felt weak. My chest felt tight. I asked my husband for help. "Clarice, can you hand me the water?" I called out. He stood in the doorway, watching, not moving, not rushing, just watching. And then he laughed. Not loud, not cruel on the outside, but sharp enough to cut something inside me. "You're always so dramatic," he said. That laugh stayed with me, because it wasn't the laugh of a man surprised by my pain. It was the laugh of a man enjoying it. We had been married for 52 years. People used to call us strong. They didn't know what strong meant. Strong meant I stayed quiet. Strong meant I endured. Strong meant I swallowed words so the house could stay calm. And for a long time, I believed that was love. I met Henry Whitmore when I was 19. He was charming, confident, the kind of man who spoke and made people listen. He promised to take care of me. And he did. At first. But slowly, that care turned into control. What I wore. Who I spoke to. How loud I laughed. "People are watching," he'd say. "Don't embarrass me." So I learned how to shrink. Years passed. Children grew. Friends drifted. And my world became very small. Just the house. Just him. Just keeping peace. When my health started failing, I thought things would soften. I thought he would slow down with me. I was wrong. He grew sharper. Colder. Every weakness I showed became something he used. "You're useless now," he said once when I dropped a plate. He didn't help me clean it. He watched. That morning on the kitchen floor, I realized something frightening. He wanted to see how far I would fall. Not to catch me, but to feel taller. When I finally stood up, leaning on the counter, I looked at him. "Why are you like this?" I asked. He shrugged. "Life's not fair," he said. "You should be used to that by now." That sentence landed heavy, because it told me everything. That night, I lay awake in bed while he slept peacefully beside me. I stared at the ceiling and asked myself a question I had avoided for decades. What happens if I stop suffering quietly? The answer scared me. But something else scared me more. Dying invisible. The next morning, I stopped doing something I had done every day for 50 years. I didn't make his breakfast. When he walked into the kitchen and saw the empty table, he frowned. "What's this?" he asked. "I'm resting," I replied. He laughed again. "You think you're sick enough to stop?" I looked at him calmly. "I think I'm done pretending." His smile faded for the first time. That was the first crack. Later that day, I overheard him on the phone. "She's weak," he said. "She won't go anywhere." I stood in the hallway, unseen. And I finally understood. My suffering made him comfortable. My silence made him powerful. And the moment I stopped breaking, he would start to fall. I went back to my room and sat on the edge of the bed. Because I knew something now. This marriage was not built on love. It was built on my endurance. And endurance has limits. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The house felt different the morning after I didn't make breakfast. Not loud. Not angry. Uneasy. Like something had shifted under the floorboards, and the house itself was waiting to see what would happen next. I sat at the small table by the window with a cup of tea, watching the steam rise slowly. My hands still shook a little, but not as badly as the day before. My legs ached. My chest felt tight, but my mind was clearer than it had been in years. Henry stood in the doorway, staring at me. He didn't say good morning. He didn't ask how I felt. He just looked at the empty stove. "You're really not cooking?" he asked. I lifted my cup and took a small sip before answering. "No," I said. He laughed softly, like this was a joke he was waiting for me to finish. "You'll come around," he said. "You always do." That sentence used to hurt me. This time, it told me something important. He believed my silence was permanent. I stayed seated as he walked past me and opened the fridge loudly. He slammed it shut. "No food," he snapped. "There's food," I replied. "You know where it is." He stared at me like I had spoken a foreign language. "You expect me to cook?" he asked. "I expect you to feed yourself," I said calmly. He shook his head. "You're being difficult on purpose." I looked at him fully then. "I've been easy for 52 years, I said. "I'm tired." That word again. Tired. He hated that word. "You think you're the only one tired," he said. "You sit at home all day." I felt heat rise in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. "This house didn't clean itself," I said. "Our children didn't raise themselves, and I didn't wear myself down alone." He scoffed. "You always rewrite history when you want sympathy." I smiled faintly. "I'm not asking for sympathy," I said. "I'm asking for space." That was the first time I saw something flicker across his face. Not anger. Not laughter. Uncertainty. He left the house without another word. The door slammed harder than necessary. I sat there long after he was gone, listening to the quiet. For years, quiet meant peace. Now, it felt like possibility. That afternoon, my body betrayed me. My knees buckled as I stood from the couch, and I had to grab the armrest to steady myself. The pain shot up my legs like fire. I sat back down, breathing slowly. This was the part Henry never saw. The private pain. The nights I cried silently into my pillow. The mornings I swallowed pills with prayers. He only saw weakness when it inconvenienced him. When he came home that evening, he was in a better mood. That worried me. He set his keys down slowly, too calmly. "Well," he said, "are you done with your little protest?" I looked up from my book. "This isn't a protest," I said. "It's a boundary." He laughed. "You don't know the first thing about boundaries." I closed the book gently. "You're right," I said, "because I was never allowed to have any." That made him stop smiling. He sat down across from me. "You think acting sick gives you power?" he asked. I met his eyes. "No," I replied. "I think pretending I'm fine gave you power." He leaned forward. "You need me," he said quietly. "You're old, you're weak." That word again. Weak. I nodded slowly. "I am old," I said, "and I am tired, but I am not weak." He smiled thinly. "Then prove it," he said. That was a challenge. One he didn't expect me to accept. That night, I slept in the guest room. Not because he asked me to. Because I chose to. When he noticed, he stood in the hallway, arms crossed. "What are you doing?" he asked. "I need rest," I replied. "You're my wife," he said. "This is ridiculous." I looked at him calmly. "I am your wife," I said, "but I am also a person." He laughed bitterly. "You've been listening to too many stories," he said. "No," I replied. "I've been listening to myself." I closed the door. He didn't knock. That scared him more than yelling ever could. The next few days followed the same pattern. I stopped rushing, stopped explaining, stopped apologizing. Henry grew restless. He started watching me more closely, waiting for me to slip, waiting for pain to break me back into place. But something had changed. I was no longer performing strength for him. I was conserving it for myself. One afternoon, I overheard him on the phone again. "She's acting strange," he said. "No, I don't think it's serious. She'll get over it." I stood in the hallway, my heart steady. He didn't know it yet, but his certainty was about to become his weakness. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my sister. "I need you," I said simply. She was quiet for a moment. "About time," she replied. When we hung up, I felt lighter. Henry noticed. "You look smug," he said. "I feel free," I replied. That made his face harden. That night, as we lay in separate rooms, I realized something important. Henry didn't fear my illness. He feared my independence. Because if I stopped needing him, he would have to face who he really was. And men like him never survive that mirror. I turned onto my side and closed my eyes, because I knew the next step I took would shake the foundation of his comfort. And once that happened, the fall would begin. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The morning I woke up alone in the guest room, my body felt lighter. Not healed, not strong, but lighter in a way I hadn't felt in years. The bed was smaller, the blanket was thinner, but the air felt cleaner. I could breathe without feeling watched. For a long time, I just lay there listening. No footsteps packing outside the door. No sighs of annoyance. No voice reminding me what I hadn't done yet. Just quiet. That quiet scared me once. Now it felt like truth. When I finally stood up, my legs trembled again. I held onto the dresser until the shaking passed. Pain lived in my joints like an old tenant that refused to leave. But pain was honest. It didn't pretend to be love. I dressed slowly and walked into the kitchen. Henry was already there. He stood at the counter, staring at the sink like it had betrayed him. "You slept in the other room," he said. "Yes," I replied. "You didn't ask." "No," I said, "I didn't." He turned toward me. "You think this changes anything?" he asked. I poured myself a glass of water before answering. "It already has," I said. That made his jaw tighten. He watched me closely that morning. Every movement, every pause, every breath. I could feel his eyes on me like weight. He was waiting. Waiting for weakness. Waiting for tears. Waiting for me to fold. I didn't. I sat at the table and ate my breakfast slowly. When my hand shook, I didn't hide it. When my knee ached, I didn't apologize for sitting longer. Henry hated that, because he had built his power on my shame. "You're doing this on purpose," he said finally. "Doing what?" I asked. "Acting helpless," he snapped. I looked up at him calmly. "I've always been like this," I said. "You just never cared when it didn't affect you." His mouth opened, then closed. That silence told me something important. He knew it was true. That afternoon, my sister arrived. Henry hadn't expected that. He stood frozen in the living room when he saw her step inside. "Clarice," she said, rushing toward me. "Lord, look at you." She wrapped her arms around me gently. Henry cleared his throat. "What's she doing here?" he asked. "She's visiting," I replied. He scoffed. "You didn't tell me." "I wasn't asking permission," I said. My sister's eyes flicked to him. "Well," she said sharply, "it's good to see you too, Henry." He forced a smile. They sat together in the living room. Henry tried to charm her. He always did that. Smiling, joking, playing the good husband. "She's been acting strange lately," he said, shaking his head. I'm worried about her. My sister didn't look at him. She looked at me. How long have you been hurting like this? She asked softly. I swallowed. A long time, I replied. Henry shifted uncomfortably. She exaggerates, he said quickly. My sister finally turned to him. Clarice has never exaggerated a day in her life, she said coldly. The room went quiet. That night, after my sister left, Henry exploded. You embarrassed me, he said sharply. I told the truth, I replied. You made me look like a monster. I looked at him steadily. You did that yourself, I said. His face twisted. You think bringing people in here will save you? He asked. No, I said. I think keeping them out almost killed me. That shut him up. For a moment. Over the next few days, things escalated quietly. Henry stopped speaking to me unless he had to. He stopped buying groceries. Stopped fixing things. Stopped pretending. He wanted me scared. He wanted me dependent again. But something unexpected happened. I didn't panic. I adapted. I cooked small meals for myself. Called my sister more. Sat outside in the mornings, letting the sun warm my face. Henry watched from the window like a man losing his grip. You think you're better than me now, he said one evening. No, I replied. I think I'm finally equal. That word made him flinch. One night, as I was heading to bed, he blocked the hallway. We need to talk, he said. I stopped. I'm listening, I replied. You're changing, he said slowly, and I don't like it. I nodded. I know, I said. You can't just rewrite our marriage, he said. I'm not rewriting it, I replied. I'm reading it clearly for the first time. His eyes darkened. You'll regret this, he said. I met his gaze. I regret waiting this long, I replied. Later that night, I heard him on the phone again. She thinks she can leave, he said quietly. She won't make it. She needs me. I stood in the dark, my heart steady. For the first time, I understood something deeply. Henry didn't love me. He needed me small. And the moment I stopped shrinking, everything he stood on began to crack. I went back to my room and sat on the bed. Tomorrow, I would take another step. A bigger one. And once I did, there would be no going back. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. Not a loud one. Not a dramatic one. Just a quiet decision that sat firmly in my chest. I was going to stop explaining myself. For years, every step I took came with reasons. Apologies. Soft words meant to keep Henry calm. I thought peace came from smoothing things over. Now I understood. Peace comes when you stop begging for permission to exist. I moved slowly through the house, careful with my body but steady in my mind. I made oatmeal for myself and ate it by the window. The sky outside was gray, but I liked that. Gray days don't pretend to be happy. They just are. Henry came into the kitchen late. He looked tired. Angrier. Like a man who had spent all night arguing with a reality that would not bend. You didn't wake me, he said. I didn't need to, I replied. He stared at the pot on the stove. Is that all you made? Yes, I said. For yourself, he asked. Yes, I repeated. He shook his head slowly. This isn't how marriage works. I finally looked straight at him. No, I said, this is how control works. His face hardened. That afternoon, I did something I had not done in years. I opened my closet. Not to clean. Not to organize. To choose. I pulled out clothes I hadn't worn because Henry didn't like them. Colors, he said, were too loud. Dresses, he said, made me look desperate. I held one soft blue dress in my hands and laughed quietly. He had convinced me that comfort was shameful. That wanting to feel nice meant I was asking for attention. I put the dress on anyway. When I walked into the living room, Henry froze. "What's that?" he asked. "My clothes," I replied. "You're not going anywhere dressed like that," he said. "I'm going to sit on my porch," I replied. "That's embarrassing," he snapped. I turned to him calmly. "Your embarrassment is not my responsibility," I said. That sentence hit him like a slap. I sat outside that afternoon longer than usual. Neighbors walked by. Some waved. Some stared. I didn't hide. For the first time in a long while, I felt visible. When I came back inside, Henry was packing. "You think people didn't notice?" he asked. "I hope they did," I replied. His voice rose. "You're trying to humiliate me." I stayed calm. "No," I said. "I'm letting the world see me again." That night, he slept on the couch. Not because I asked. Because he couldn't stand the quiet strength in the room. I lay awake, listening to the house settle. My body ached, but my spirit felt strangely light. I realized something important then. Henry wasn't angry because I was sick. He was angry because I was recovering. The next day, the mail arrived. Bills, letters, one envelope with Henry's name written boldly across it. He opened it at the table. His face changed. "What is it?" I asked. "Nothing," he said quickly, folding it. I didn't push, but I noticed his hands shaking. That was new. Over the next few days, small things began to slip. He misplaced his keys, forgot appointments, snapped at strangers on the phone. The man who once seemed so sure of himself now looked unsettled. "You're distracting me," he accused one evening. "I'm not doing anything," I replied. "That's the problem," he said. "You're not reacting." He was right. I was. One afternoon, my sister called again. "How are you holding up?" she asked. "I'm standing," I replied. She smiled through the phone. "That's new," she said. Henry overheard. "You don't need to fill her head with nonsense," he said loudly. I covered the phone and looked at him. "I don't need permission to speak," I said. He slammed his fist on the table. "You're pushing me." I stood up slowly. "No," I said. "You're losing control." That sentence changed everything. That night, he didn't come home until late. I heard him packing in the driveway before coming in. The door opened quietly. Too quietly. He stood in the hallway, watching me like he used to. But something had flipped. This time, I was the one not afraid. "You think you've won," he said. "I haven't won anything," I replied. "I've stopped losing." He stepped closer. "You don't know what you're doing," he warned. I met his eyes. "I know exactly what I'm doing," I said. "I'm surviving." He laughed nervously. "You won't make it without me." I tilted my head slightly. "We'll see," I replied. Later that night, I heard him on the phone again. "She's acting independent," he whispered. "No, she doesn't see it coming." "I'll handle it." I sat on the edge of my bed, my heart steady but alert. That was the moment I knew. Henry wasn't just angry. He was afraid. And afraid men don't stop quietly. They make mistakes. Big ones. I lay back and closed my eyes. Because whatever he was planning, it would only speed up his fall. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The morning I decided to leave the house, my body fought me. My knees ached the moment I stood up. A sharp pain shot through my lower back, the kind that made me pause and breathe through it. My hands trembled as I reached for the dresser. For a moment, I almost sat back down. Not because I couldn't do it, but because I had been trained, for 52 years, to believe that discomfort meant stop. That pain meant surrender. That was the lie Henry had built his life on. I stayed standing. I waited for the shaking to pass. And when it did, I dressed slowly, carefully, choosing each movement like it mattered, because it did. Henry was already awake. I could hear him in the kitchen, moving louder than necessary. Cups placed too hard on the counter, cabinets shut with a little extra force. He wanted me to notice. I did, but I didn't react. That frustrated him more than anger ever could. When I walked into the kitchen, he looked up sharply. "Where do you think you're going?" he asked. His voice wasn't loud. It was sharp, like a hook meant to pull me back. "I'm going out," I replied. He laughed under his breath. "You can barely stand," he said. "Sit down." I poured myself a glass of water. "I didn't ask for permission," I said. That made him freeze. He stepped closer, lowering his voice like he always did when he wanted control. "You think walking around pretending you're strong makes you strong?" he asked. I looked at him calmly. "No," I replied. "Standing up does." He shook his head slowly. "You're embarrassing yourself," he said. I picked up my purse. "I'm reclaiming myself," I replied. That was the moment his smile disappeared completely. The front door felt heavier than usual when I opened it. Not because of the door, because of what it represented. For decades, leaving the house meant errands, groceries, appointments, things that served Henry or the family. This time, I wasn't serving anyone. I was choosing myself. The sunlight hit my face as I stepped outside, and for a second I had to close my eyes. It felt too bright, like the world hadn't seen me in a long time. I took a deep breath and walked slowly down the porch steps. Each step hurt, but each step felt earned. I didn't go far, just down the street. Past houses I had lived near for years, but never really noticed. Neighbors I had waved at, but never spoken to. I walked until my legs told me to rest. Then I sat on a bench and let myself breathe. I realized something then. Henry had made my world very small. Not by locking doors, but by convincing me I didn't need anything outside of him. When I returned home, Henry was waiting. He stood in the living room, arms crossed, face tight. "You went out alone," he said. "Yes," I replied. "You could have fallen," he snapped. I nodded. "I could have," I said, "but I didn't." "You're reckless," he said. "No," I replied. "I'm awake." That word bothered him. Awake. Because sleeping people don't resist. That afternoon, the phone rang. Henry answered it. I could hear his voice from the other room. "Yes, she's been acting strained. No, I don't think she's well, I'm worried." I stood very still, listening. Every word felt like confirmation. When he hung up, I walked into the room. "Who was that?" I asked. "None of your business," he replied quickly. I nodded. "That's new," I said. "You used to want me to hear." He didn't answer, but his jaw tightened. That evening, something small happened. And small things often reveal the most. Henry couldn't find an important paper. He searched the table, the drawer, the counter. "Where did you put it?" he demanded. "I didn't touch it," I replied. "You always move things," he snapped. I looked at him calmly. "I stopped managing your life," I said. That sentence broke something. "You think you can just stop?" he shouted. "Yes," I replied. "I can." He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. That was because he didn't. The version of me that cleaned up after him was gone. Later that night, I overheard him on the phone again. "She's not cooperating," he said quietly. "She thinks she's independent." "No, she won't last." I sat on the edge of the bed and smiled. He still believed I would break. That belief was his weakness. The next day, my sister came again. Henry didn't greet her, didn't offer her a seat, just watched her carefully, like she was a threat. Which she was. "You look different," my sister said to me quietly. I feel different, I replied. Henry scoffed. She's playing strong, he said. It won't last. My sister turned to him slowly. You've underestimated her for decades, she said. That's your problem. His face darkened. You don't belong in our marriage, he snapped. She smiled coldly. I belong wherever my sister needs me, she replied. That was the first time Henry walked away from a conversation. That night, he slept poorly. I could hear him tossing, sighing, getting up and packing. I slept better than I had in years. Because for the first time, I wasn't bracing myself for his moods. I was listening to my own body. In the early hours of the morning, I heard him get up again. I followed quietly and stood in the hallway. He was on the phone. She's slipping away, he said. No, I won't let her ruin everything. I'll remind her who she needs. I stepped back silently, my heart steady, because now I understood something clearly. Henry didn't love me. He needed me weak. And the weaker I became physically, the more he enjoyed it. That realization hurt, but it also freed me. Later that day, Henry did something unexpected. He was kind. Too kind. He offered to make me tea, asked if I needed help, touched my shoulder gently. This wasn't care. It was strategy. You don't have to fight me, he said softly. We can go back to how things were. I looked at him. I don't want to go back, I replied. His smile cracked. You won't survive without me, he said quietly. I leaned closer. You're the one who's scared, I replied. That was the moment I saw it. Fear. Real fear. Because control only feels safe when it's unquestioned. That night, I packed a small bag. Just essentials. Clothes, medicine, my notebook. Henry watched from the doorway. What's that? He asked. A precaution, I replied. You think you're leaving, he scoffed. I think I'm preparing, I said. He laughed nervously. You don't have anywhere to go. I zipped the bag slowly. We'll see, I replied. As I turned off the light, I felt it. The shift. The beginning of the fall. Because when a man who enjoys your suffering realizes you are no longer afraid, he starts to unravel. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I did not leave that night. Not because I was afraid, but because I wanted to watch what happened next. Henry slept lightly, like a man guarding something fragile. Every time I moved in the guest room, I heard him stir. He didn't knock. He didn't call my name. He just listened. That told me something important. He was afraid of what I might do when he wasn't looking. The next morning, I woke up with a sharp pain in my chest. Not fear. Grief. Grief for the woman I had been for 52 years. The woman who thought love meant patience without limits. The woman who thought suffering quietly was a sign of strength. The woman who believed that if she just endured long enough, kindness would come back to her. That woman was tired, and she was finally stepping aside. Henry watched me closely as I moved through the house. Too closely. He followed me with his eyes when I poured water, when I sat down, when I stood up again. You need to be careful, he said. Your body can't handle stress. I nodded. That's why I stopped letting you cause it, I replied. His lips pressed into a thin line. You think I'm the problem, he said. I think you enjoy when I'm helpless, I replied. That stopped him cold. He spent the rest of the morning pretending nothing was wrong. Whistling, reading the paper, acting normal. But his hands shook when he turned the pages. I noticed. I always noticed. That was my curse and my gift. Around noon, the phone rang. Henry answered. I could hear his voice from the other room. Yes, she's been unwell. No, I don't think she realizes how serious it is. I'm trying to help her. I felt something twist in my chest. He wasn't just lying. He was rehearsing, building a story. When he hung up, I walked into the room. "Who was that?" I asked. "My brother," he said quickly. I tilted my head. "Funny," I said. "Sounded like a stranger." He glared at me. "You're paranoid," he snapped. "No," I replied. "I'm observant." That word made him flinch. That afternoon, my sister called again. "Can I come get you for a few days?" she asked gently. Henry was in the room. He froze when he heard her voice through the phone. I looked at him, then back at the phone. "Not yet," I said, "but thank you." Henry let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. After I hung up, he said quietly, "You don't need her filling your head." "I need her reminding me who I am," I replied. His jaw tightened. By evening, the house felt tight, like walls were leaning inward. Henry paced. I sat. That difference made him furious. "You're doing this on purpose," he said. "Doing what?" I asked. "Being calm," he snapped, "like you don't care." I looked up at him. "I care," I said. "I just don't perform anymore." That made his voice rise. "You think you're above me now?" I shook my head. "I think we were never equals," I replied, "and that's the problem." That night, he tried a different approach. He sat across from me at the table, lowered his voice, softened his tone. "You know I've always taken care of you," he said. I looked at my hands. Hands that had scrubbed floors, held bobbies, cleaned wounds, carried groceries, caught tears. "Yes," I said, "and you made sure I never forgot it." He smiled thinly. "That's marriage," he said. "No," I replied, "that's ownership." The smile disappeared. Later, when I went to my room, I heard him on the phone again. "She's getting ideas," he whispered. "No, I don't think she's thinking clearly. I may need help." I sat on the edge of the bed and felt a chill run through me. Help? That word scared me more than yelling. Because help, to a man like Henry, meant control wearing a mask. The next day, something happened that changed everything. I woke up dizzy. The room spun when I tried to stand. I sat back down hard, breathing fast. My chest hurt. My vision blurred. For a moment, fear rose. Real fear. Not of Henry. Of my body giving out before I could finish this. I called out softly, "Henry." He came into the room slowly. "What now?" he asked. "I don't feel right," I said. He stood there, watching, not moving, not reaching. The same look from the kitchen floor weeks ago. Calculation. Then he sighed loudly. "You always choose the worst times," he said. That was it. That sentence. That confirmed everything I had been trying not to admit. "I need help," I said. He crossed his arms. "You need to calm down," he replied. "You're making yourself sick." I felt tears sting my eyes. Not from pain. From clarity. "I could be dying," I whispered. He shrugged. "You're not," he said. "You just want attention." That was the moment something in me broke completely. Not loudly. Cleanly. Like a chain snapping. I reached for my phone with shaking hands. Henry's eyes widened. "What are you doing?" he asked sharply. "I'm calling my sister," I replied. "You don't need to do that," he said, stepping closer. "I do," I replied. He reached out. I pulled back. "Don't touch me," I said firmly. That word, firmly, stopped him. Because it wasn't fear. It was command. My sister answered on the first ring. "I'm coming," she said immediately. Henry exploded then. "You're overreacting," he shouted. "She's unstable." I looked at him from the bed. "No," I said. "I'm done trusting you with my life." Those words hung in the air like smoke. When my sister arrived, Henry tried to block the door. She pushed past him. One look at me and her face changed. "This is bad," she said. Henry scoffed. "She's dramatic," he said. My sister turned to him. "If she dies," she said quietly, "you will live with that." For the first time, Henry said nothing. They helped me into the car. Henry stood on the porch, watching. Not crying. Not apologizing. Calculating. As the car pulled away, I looked back at the house. My house. My prison. My silence. And I realized something terrifying and freeing all at once. Henry had built his life on my suffering. And now, I had taken it with me. Whatever came next, he would feel it. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The drive to my sister's house felt longer than it was. Every bump in the road sent a small wave of pain through my body, but I didn't complain. I stared out the window, watching familiar streets pass by like memories I had outgrown. My sister kept one hand on the steering wheel and one hand near me, like she was afraid I might disappear if she didn't keep me close. "You should have called sooner," she said quietly. "I know," I replied. "But I'm glad you called now." I nodded. So was I. When we arrived, she helped me inside and settled me onto her couch with pillows tucked carefully around my back. The house smelled like soap and cooked food and something warm I couldn't name. Safety. I hadn't realized how long it had been since I felt that. She handed me water and medicine and sat beside me, watching my face closely. "You scared me," she said. "I scared myself," I admitted. She shook her head slowly. "He let you get that bad," she said. I didn't answer. There was no need. That night, I slept deeper than I had in years. Not because I was healed, but because I wasn't guarding myself. I didn't wake up waiting for footsteps or sighs or sharp words. I slept like someone who knew no one would punish her for resting. When I woke in the morning, sunlight filled the room. My sister was already up, moving quietly in the kitchen. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Still hurting," I said, "but clearer." She nodded. "That matters more than you think." Henry called that afternoon. My sister answered the phone and put it on speaker without asking me. "What did you do to her?" he demanded. "I helped her," my sister replied calmly. "You kidnapped her," he snapped. I spoke then. "No," I said, "I left." There was a pause. Then he laughed. "You can't just leave your marriage," he said. "I didn't leave my marriage," I replied. "I left your cruelty." His voice hardened. "You're sick," he said. "You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying," I replied, for the first time. He went quiet. Then he said something that made my stomach turn. "You won't last without me." I smiled faintly. "You won't last without someone to hurt," I replied. The line went dead. Over the next few days, I rested. Not just my body. My mind. I ate slowly, slept when I needed to, sat in the backyard listening to birds like they were telling secrets just for me. And slowly, memories came back. Not the loud ones. The quiet ones. The first time Henry corrected my laughter. The first time he mocked my tears. The first time I apologized for being tired. I saw the pattern clearly now. He didn't want a wife. He wanted an audience. My sister helped me make calls. Doctor appointments. Medication reviews. People I had stopped talking to because Henry didn't like them. Each call felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. One afternoon, an old friend said, "We wondered where you went." I swallowed. "I was still here," I replied. "I just wasn't allowed to be seen." Henry showed up at my sister's house on the fourth day. He didn't knock. He rang the bell hard and long. My sister opened the door, but didn't let him inside. "You can't keep her here," he said. I'm not keeping her, she replied. She's staying. He tried to look past her. Clarice, he called, come home. I stepped into view. This is my home right now, I said. He scoffed. You're confused. No, I replied. I'm done. That word made him snap. You think you're strong because you ran away, he shouted. I think I'm alive because I left, I replied. Neighbors were watching now. Henry noticed. His voice dropped. You're embarrassing me, he hissed. I smiled. That used to matter, I said. He stepped back. For the first time, he looked unsure. After he left, my sister locked the door and leaned against it. He's unraveling, she said. I know, I replied. And that scared me. Not because I missed him, but because men like Henry don't fall quietly. That night, I received a message from an old neighbor. He's telling people you've lost your mind. I stared at the screen. There it was. The next tactic. When control fails, reputation becomes the weapon. I showed my sister. She sighed. He's scared, she said. Yes, I replied, and dangerous when scared. The next morning, I felt stronger physically. Not healed, but steadier. I stood without help. Walked across the room alone. Each step felt like proof. Henry had always said I couldn't survive without him. My body was answering that lie one movement at a time. Then the call came. From someone I hadn't expected. Henry's brother. I don't know what's going on, he said carefully, but Henry's not himself. I laughed softly. He's exactly himself, I replied. There was silence. He's saying you abandoned him, the brother said. I saved myself, I replied. Another pause. I thought you should know, he said. I already do, I replied. That evening, my sister sat beside me. He's losing support, she said. I know, I replied. And when he loses support, she continued, he'll try something big. I nodded slowly. I'm ready. She looked at me closely. Are you? She asked. I thought about the kitchen floor. The laughter. The watching. The way he enjoyed my pain. Yes, I said, I am. Later that night, my phone buzzed. A message from Henry. You think you've won, but people will believe me. I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back one sentence. They already see you. I turned the phone off and lay back. Because the truth had started moving. Quietly. Relentlessly. And once truth starts moving, it doesn't stop for anyone. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The morning after Henry's message, I woke up calm. That surprised me. I had expected fear, or anger, or sadness, but instead there was calm. The kind that comes when you've already survived the worst part and your body knows it. My sister was in the kitchen when I came out, stirring oatmeal slowly. You sleep? She asked. Yes, I replied. She smiled. That's good. I sat at the table and wrapped my hands around the warm bowl. The smell reminded me of mornings long ago, before marriage taught me to rush through meals and feelings. I feel like something's coming, she said quietly. So do I replied. We didn't say Henry's name. We didn't have to. Later that morning, the phone rang again. I knew who it was before I answered. Not Henry. Someone else. Someone he didn't expect me to hear from. It was a woman from church. Clarice, she said carefully, are you all right? Yes, I replied. She hesitated. Henry told us you're struggling. I smiled softly. I've been struggling for years, I said, but not the way he means. Silence. He says you're confused, she continued. I'm clearer than I've ever been, I replied. She didn't argue. Instead, she sighed. That's what I thought, she said. That was the first crack in his story. By noon, 3 more calls came. Different voices. Same concern. Each one gave me the same opening. And each time I spoke calmly. I left because I was sick and unsafe. I left because I needed care. I left because staying was harming me. No shouting. No accusations. Just truth. Truth doesn't rush. It waits. And when enough people hear the same calm story, lies begin to shake. Henry came back that afternoon. Not to my sister's house. To the church. I didn't know at first. I found out when another call came in. He stood up during prayer, someone whispered. He said he was losing his wife. He said you were being manipulated. I closed my eyes. Classic Henry. Turn pain into performance. He always loved an audience. But this time, something went wrong. He was crying, the woman continued. Too hard, too fast. It made people uncomfortable. I nodded slowly. When liars cry too loud, people start listening closer. That evening, Henry called again. I let it ring. Then ring again. Finally, I answered. You're ruining me, he said without greeting. I'm telling the truth, I replied. You're letting people think I'm cruel, he snapped. I paused. No, I said gently. You're letting people see it. His breathing changed. Vast. Uneven. You need to come home, he said. This has gone too far. I leaned back against the couch. It went too far when you laughed at my pain, I replied. He went quiet. Then he said something desperate. I need you. That sentence used to keep me. Not anymore. You need control, I replied. Not me. His voice cracked. You think you're better than me now. I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. I think I survived you, I said. The line went dead. That night, my sister sat with me on the porch. The air was cool, quiet. He's unraveling, she said. I know, I replied. He's losing people. I know, I repeated. And when he loses people, she continued, he'll come back harder. I looked out into the dark. I'm ready, I said again. The next morning, something unexpected happened. Henry's sister called. I hadn't heard her voice in years. Clarice, she said softly, I didn't believe you at first. I stayed quiet. But something's off, she continued. Henry's angry at everyone. I nodded slowly. He always was, I replied. She sighed. He's saying you've been planning this. I smiled faintly. I've been surviving this, I said. Another pause. Then she said, I'm sorry. That word landed heavy. Not because it fixed anything, but because it told me his mask was slipping. By afternoon, Henry showed up at my sister's house again. This time, he didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He looked tired. Old. Smaller. Clarice, he said softly through the door, please. My sister stood beside me. You don't have to talk to him, she whispered. I know, I replied. But I chose to. I opened the door. He looked at me like a man who had lost his reflection. You embarrassed me, he said quietly. I looked at him carefully. You embarrassed yourself, I replied. He swallowed. I took care of you, he said. You took control of me, I replied. His shoulders slumped. I don't know who I am without you, he admitted. That was the closest thing to truth I had ever heard from him. And for the first time, I felt nothing. No guilt. No need to rescue him. Just distance. You need help, I said calmly. He looked hopeful. Then come home, he said quickly. No, I replied. Get help. His face hardened again. So that's it, he asked. You're just going to watch me fall. I met his eyes. No, I said. I'm going to keep standing. That broke him. He laughed bitterly. You think you've won. I shook my head. This was never a game, I said. He turned and walked away without another word. That night, my phone buzzed again. A message. Not from Henry. From someone else. He's been telling people you're cruel. But they're starting to ask questions. I smiled. Because when questions start, stories crumble. I lay back and closed my eyes. Henry wanted to watch me suffer. Instead, he was watching himself lose control. And the hardest part was still ahead of him. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The silence that followed Henry walking away felt heavy. Not peaceful. Heavy. Like the air itself was holding its breath. I stayed on the porch long after he disappeared down the street. My sister didn't rush me. She knew better. Healing doesn't like to be hurried. You okay? She asked softly. Yes, I replied, just steady. That was the word that fit best. Steady. For the first time in my life, I wasn't reacting to Henry's moods. I wasn't chasing his approval or fearing his anger. I was standing in myself, solid, like a tree that had finally grown deep roots. And that scared him more than anything else ever had. Over the next few days, things moved quickly. Not loudly. Quietly. Phone calls, messages, small conversations whispered between people Henry thought he controlled. Someone from church called to check on me again. A neighbor asked my sister how I was doing. An old family friend sent a short message, I see you. Each one was like a thread pulling loose from Henry's carefully woven image. He had spent years crafting a version of himself that only worked if I stayed silent. Now that silence was gone, Henry tried one last angle. He stopped calling me. Instead, he posted long messages online, sad words, carefully chosen phrases. Praying for my wife. Standing strong in hard times. Marriage is tested by sickness. I read them without flinching. Because something important had changed. I didn't feel the need to defend myself anymore. Truth doesn't chase lies. It waits. That afternoon, Henry's brother came to see me. He stood awkwardly in the doorway, hat in his hands. I didn't believe you at first, he admitted. I know, I replied. But Henry's not right, he said. He's angry all the time. I nodded. He always was, I said again. The brother sighed. He says you betrayed him. I looked at him calmly. I survived him, I replied. He swallowed. That was when I knew. The story had flipped. That night, my body reminded me I was still healing. Pain woke me in the early hours. My chest felt tight. My legs ached deeply. My sister helped me sit up and brought water. You scared? She asked. A little, I admitted, but not like before. Why? She asked. Because now, I said, I'm not sick and trapped. I'm sick and free. She squeezed my hand. That freedom mattered more than comfort. Henry broke down 2 days later. Not in front of me. In front of everyone else. He called my sister crying. She ruined my life, he said. She saved hers, my sister replied calmly. He hung up on her. Then he called again. I need her, he sobbed. She needs peace, my sister said. That was the moment he lost. Not because I won, but because he finally said the truth out loud. That evening, a message came from Henry himself. I can't sleep. I can't eat. You did this to me. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I typed back one sentence. I lived like that for years. I turned the phone off. Because I knew what was coming next. Desperation. And desperation makes people reckless. The next day, Henry showed up again. This time, he looked broken. Not soft. Broken. You happy now? he asked bitterly. No, I replied. I'm honest. He laughed shakily. You think people believe you? I know they do, I said, because I stopped whispering. He shook his head. You were nothing without me. I stood slowly, pain shooting through my legs, but my voice stayed calm. I was everything despite you, I said. That was when his face changed. Not anger. Not sadness. Fear. Real fear. Because he finally understood something he had never considered. I didn't need him anymore. And without me, he didn't know who he was. Henry left without another word. That night, my sister locked the doors early. Something feels off, she said. I know, I replied. Because when control collapses completely, people either chain or they collapse with it. And Henry had never learned how to change. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. My body still fragile. My spirit stronger than ever. Tomorrow would bring something final. I could feel it. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The night before everything ended, I barely slept. Not because I was afraid of Henry, but because my body knew something heavy was coming. Pain woke me before sunrise, a deep ache in my chest, my legs stiff and slow. I sat up carefully, breathing through it, reminding myself I was still here, still breathing, still choosing myself. My sister knocked gently on the door. You okay? She asked. Yes, I said, just listening to my body. She nodded. You're stronger than you think. I smiled faintly. I know, I said. I finally know. That morning, the phone rang early. It was Henry's brother again. His voice sounded tired. He's spiraling, he said. He's telling different stories to different people. I closed my eyes. When lies multiply, I said, the truth shows itself. The brother sighed. He wants to meet, one last time. I was quiet for a moment. Then I said, all right. My sister's eyes widened. You don't have to, she whispered. I know, I replied, but this isn't for him. It was for me. We met at a quiet park. Open space. Public. Safe. Henry was already there, sitting on a bench, hunched forward like the weight of his own thoughts was crushing him. He looked older. Smaller. Not powerful anymore. I walked slowly toward him, my sister a few steps behind me. When Henry saw me, his face twisted with something like relief. Then anger. Then fear. You look well, he said bitterly. I look honest, I replied. He laughed softly. You always had a way with words. No, I said. I just stopped swallowing them. He gestured for me to sit. I didn't. I won't stay long, I said. That hurt him. You owe me, he snapped. I tilted my head slightly. I gave you 52 years, I said. That was more than enough. His face hardened. You wouldn't have survived without me, he said. I looked at him calmly. I almost didn't survive with you, I replied. That silence that followed felt final. He looked around, like he wanted witnesses. You made me look like a monster, he said. I shook my head. No, I said. I told the truth. People decided on their own. He clenched his fists. You enjoyed watching me fall, he accused. I took a breath. No, I said softly. I enjoyed standing after you tried to break me. His shoulders sagged. I don't know who I am anymore, he admitted. For a brief second, I felt something old stir. Not love. Not pity. Memory. But I didn't step back into it. That's something you have to face, I said. I already faced mine. He stood suddenly, voice rising. You think you're free now, he shouted. People nearby turned to look. I am. I replied calmly. You ruined my life. I met his eyes. No, I said. You built your life on my silence, and silence ended. That was the moment he truly broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, but internally, because he finally understood. There was no version of this where he won. He sank back onto the bench, covering his face. I wanted you to need me, he whispered. I nodded. I know, I said. And I wanted to live. I turned away then. Not angry. Not triumphant. Just finished. That evening, my sister and I sat together on the porch again. The sky was pink and gold. Peaceful. You okay? She asked. Yes, I replied, tired but whole. She smiled. He's done, she said. I know, I replied. Because power that feeds on suffering cannot survive once the suffering leaves. In the weeks that followed, my body healed slowly. Not perfectly, but honestly. I moved at my own pace. Spoke when I wanted. Rested without apology. Henry faded. Not dramatically. Quietly. People stopped calling him. Stopped defending him. Stopped believing his stories. Truth had done its work. One afternoon, I received a final message from him. I never thought you'd leave. I stared at it for a long time. Then typed back one sentence. I never thought I'd survive you. I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't need one. Now, when I sit by the window in the mornings, I don't feel watched. I feel present. My life is smaller, but it is mine. My voice is softer, but it is heard. My body is fragile, but my spirit is unbreakable. My husband wanted to watch me suffer. Instead, I watched him fall, and I stood. If this story touched you, please subscribe, like, and turn on the notification bell for more emotional stories like this. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Somewhere out there, I might be reading.